Late tonight, in a stunning but not shocking move, the Texas Supreme Court ruled against 31-year-old Kate Cox, who sued to get an emergency abortion because her fetus had developed a lethal condition and her health was at risk. In their ruling tonight, the court said that difficulties in pregnancy, even serious ones, do not pose the heightened risk to the mother that the state's exceptions for a mother whose life is in danger encompasses, going against what Cox's doctor had recommended. Due to her underlying health conditions, every day Cox remained pregnant, endangered her health and her ability to have another child, which she has said she wants. It's worth noting just who made that private health decision for her. The court is made up entirely of Republicans, including John Devine, who centered his 2012 election on his anti-abortion ideology, including boasting about getting arrested dozens of times for protesting abortion clinics. One of his campaign ads spoke about the decision he and his wife made to continue a high-risk pregnancy that doctors said was likely to end in the deaths of both mother and child. According to the Texas Tribune, his wife Nubia survived the birth, but their daughter only lived for an hour. That was Devine and his wife's private decision to go forward with that pregnancy. And now Kate Cox's health is at risk because people like Devine are trying to make that decision for her. Cox's lawyers say she has left the state to get that abortion. Joining me now is Melissa Murray, professor of law at New York University and an MSNBC legal analyst. You know, even with Roe gone, Melissa, it is hard, I think, for me and for a lot of women to just get it in our heads and that women in the year of our Lord, 2023, have to go to a court, then get overruled by the United States Supreme Court on our personal health care, even at risk of our lives. But just as a legal matter, how can it be that exceptions for supposedly the life of the mother do not cover a case in which a mother could die from sepsis from having dead fetal tissue inside of her?
Well, Joy, this is all down to the chaotic and confused environment that's been left in the wake of Roe in many states. It is true that many of the most draconian abortion bans have provisions for exceptions in cases where a pregnancy would threaten the health of the woman or would result in a non-viable fetus. But there's a lot of gray area as to whether or not doctors can actually perform abortions in the judgment, their medical judgment, without risking legal or criminal liability. And so this is one of those situations in Texas. This woman's doctor believes that she needs an abortion in order to preserve her future fertility and in order to preserve her life. But the doctor did not feel that the landscape was clear enough that she could order and perform that abortion without risking legal liability for doing so. And recall, Texas has not only a criminal abortion ban in place, there's also SB 8, which is the bounty hunter law that allows any private individual to file suit against anyone helping a pregnant person to get an abortion. And that includes the physician. So physicians are really in a difficult position here. They can perform these abortions and be subject to criminal and civil liability. Anytime you are the subject of a civil lawsuit, you have to report that for purposes of licensing. So a lot of physicians are just like, it's just not worth it. I'm not going to do it. And that is exactly the kind of landscape that Texas wants, where not only is it prohibited, but even the exceptions are difficult to get.
Well, when we talk to doctors down there, they've said, well, the result is going to be a lot of physicians are going to leave the state, because why would you want to practice in a state that essentially is the handmaid's tale? You know, the thing that's so infuriating about this is that the decision on whether a woman can get this exception is really in some ways down to whether the decision maker is a woman or a man. In the case of the judge who said, yes, she should be able to have this abortion, this female judge, and obviously her doctor, or this zealot man who sits on the Supreme Court, despite himself having protested and violated the law and gotten arrested 37 times trying to obstruct women from getting abortions. I don't understand how she doesn't have a legal claim against this judge, for instance. He's clearly biased by his own ideology.
I mean, this is the tribunal that she has. This is the Texas Supreme Court. This is an individual who is an elected individual in Texas. Many of the judges on the Texas Supreme Court will be up for re-election in the upcoming election cycle. And so, you know, Texas women, if this matters to you, here's an opportunity to make your voices heard. But that kind of disparity is one that we see at all levels of government. In Congress, in state legislatures, we have men, often of geriatric age, making decisions about reproductive health for women. And again, there isn't a lot of equity in terms or parity in terms of representation in these legislative bodies. If there are women in the bodies, and women are woefully underrepresented in most legislative bodies, they're not necessarily women of reproductive age. Like, the people making these decisions are not the people who have to face these really difficult choices.